Welcome back to BT Vancouver. We are approaching 8:15 on this Monday morning, and while we wait for Justin Trudeau's daily address to Canadians, we'll bring you this next story. The next update on the status of COVID-19 in this province is expected later today. The last update was issued on Saturday when we learned of another 11 positive cases, but 2 days in a row with no additional deaths. Today, the focus is on schools as districts across BC reopen. Dr. Bonnie Henry is confident they can do so safely.
We've had 77 young people under the age of 19 who have tested positive in BC, so that is less than 1%, and that is despite thousands of children having been tested. So those are things that we have been watching carefully over the last few months, and particularly in the last couple of weeks. We purposely timed the reopening of schools to be sure that we had a period of time of an incubation period to see if we were going to start seeing increased numbers of cases in our communities once we started our restart program. And if we had seen an increase, then we would have postponed or delayed the start of schools.
Dr. Henry says health officials support families deciding what is best for their kids, whether they choose to stay home and learn online or go back to school. Taking a look at the COVID-19 situation across Canada now, Quebec has over 51,000 cases, Ontario above 27,800, Alberta over 7,000, BC with 2,573. In total, we are getting close to 91,000 cases across Canada. Almost 7,300 people have died, nearly 48,900 have recovered. Ottawa is putting millions of dollars towards encouraging Canadians to explore their own backyards this summer. The funds will go towards promoting holiday travel inside Canada as international borders remain largely closed due to COVID-19. The funds include $30 million originally earmarked for attracting foreign visitors. Around $40 million will go towards helping tourism agencies in Western Canada and Ontario adapt their operations to the pandemic. As more educational classes move online during the pandemic, international students face an uncertain future. Erica Natividad explains.
I'm Erica Natividad at the University of Toronto. With classes moved online, many international students are now left in limbo. They can stay here in Toronto alone and on a mostly empty campus, or they can fly home with no guarantee that they'll be able to return. And while they wait to make that decision, the costs of staying here are piling up.
Essentially, it is kind of like a stranded situation.
Abina Somaya is a University of Toronto international student from Ghana who is here on her own. She says when in-person classes were canceled at the school, her parents thought it better for her to stay in Toronto because if she flew home, she'd have to quarantine for 14 days in a government facility.
Where we're from, facilities like that aren't really the best, the most sanitary. So that's the last thing that they wanted. So they thought it would be better for me to stay here. And before we knew it, it was May. And now we're still kind of thinking about what to do next.
If she stays, she'll have to continue paying rent and other expenses on top of the already astronomical costs of tuition.
Close to $60,000, yes.
Per year?
Per year.
But even if she did fly home, because of the pandemic, the cost for a ticket right now is much higher than normal. Flights home for Chinese students in particular have soared.
I also booked from one Chinese official website, which is Xiamen Airline. It's about 9,000 Canadian dollars, but it's only one way of flight.
There's also the added stress of potentially not being able to return if border restrictions remain.
The government is allowing students to take the next term of studies outside of Canada if that is required, right, without any impact on their study permit status and so on, so that we will have students who will be taking courses from their home country, students who will be here. So, of course, we need to provide our courses in a remote way, and that is what we're planning.
International students contribute $21.6 billion to Canada's GDP. Samaya says she understands why students like her don't receive the same financial relief as domestic students. But with the extreme cost of studying here, she says many hope more can be done to assist them. In addition to letting students study a term outside of Canada, the federal government says it is also removing the 20-hour-per-week work cap as long as students are working in an essential service. In Toronto, Erica Natividad, City News.
All right, approaching 8:20 now. A group of provincial leaders are banding together to launch a new program aimed at combating racism here in BC. Miranda Fatour has this story.
Racism has no place in Canadian society. Not now, not ever.
British Columbia is stepping up in the fight against racism by launching a social media campaign called Different Together to encourage diversity and combat hate.
I ask you to join with me in pledging to uphold our Canadian values of diversity and inclusion and opposing racism in all its forms.
The video features BC's Lieutenant Governor Janet Austin and the 3 leaders of BC's main political parties, asking everyone to stand up against hateful acts. The launch comes after several incidents of racism around the Lower Mainland, including racist graffiti in Chinatown, an attack on a 92-year-old Asian man with dementia at a convenience store, and several reports of racial slurs being used.
The Asian Canadian community is so concerned about this situation that some elders are being warned not to leave their homes for fear of being subjected to racist abuse.
Last week, the Vancouver Police Department reported it's currently investigating 29 anti-Asian incidents, acknowledging the trend came after the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. Richmond's Queenie Chu says BC's pledge is a positive step in the right direction.
This is a way to really strengthen what a community is like, what is the diverse community is like when we stand together in solidarity against racism.
The province is encouraging everyone to take the Different Together pledge by downloading the pledge graphic, sharing it on social media, and tagging 5 other people.
It's a very powerful way to send a signal to people. Definitely there's no place in our community. It's only going to divide our community rather than strengthen our diverse community, which is our strength.
So far, the pledge has spread quickly across social media, with businesses, MLAs, city councillors, and many more jumping on board. In Richmond, Miranda Fatour, City News.
8:21 now on BT Vancouver. Gloves, plexiglass shields, and lots of deep cleaning. Those are just some of the many COVID-19 precautions taken by one gym owner in Metro Vancouver. Mike Hamill at Tawasin Springs Fitness has trained the likes of Clint Eastwood and Rick Hansen. 2 years ago, a tragic boating accident left him a paraplegic. In the face of yet another crisis, Hamill is determined to make his gym safe and get people working out again.
So we have a lot of rules in place. It's the only way we can attack the COVID-19 program is really taking the precautions ourselves. And I don't know of any other clubs in the city that went to this type of an expense to make sure that people were safe. And yeah, we covered pretty much every base.
Our facility could probably hold about 12 people, but we're going to keep it down to a maximum of 8 because we feel that that is the safest way for people to be able to feel comfortable in the gym and be able to use the things that they want to use. If we have too many people, then they may not be able to use the treadmill and use the weights because they're always crossing paths. So if we limit it to number 8, I think we still can maintain that safety distance for the client.
And while we wait for Justin Trudeau, we'll bring you some international news. In Paris, more than a year after a massive fire torched a large portion of the Notre Dame Cathedral, the square in front of the historic church has now reopened. With some COVID-19 restrictions easing in the French capital, some residents took the chance to get close to the 850-year-old building. Work to rebuild the structure and surrounding area has slowed due to the pandemic. Hundreds of Muslim worshippers gathered in Jerusalem for noon prayers. It's the first time the mosque has been open for daily prayer since March 15th. Restrictions and rules have been put in place. People inside and in the surrounding area must wear a mask.
Faccio appello affinché non manchi a nessuno.
And in Italy, Pope Francis is urging governments across the globe to take it slow when it comes to reopening economies. In his first address since early March, he said healing people is more important than the economy. In Italy, lockdowns are beginning to ease, and much of the country will be at least partially reopened by Wednesday. So far, it has been one of the hardest hit European countries, with 33,000 COVID-19 deaths.